And we're going to continue Title IV, promoting the general welfare. Just the general reminder, welfare means health, happiness, prosperity. And so how do we promote prosperity? We ensure that everyone has enough money to participate in the economy and keep it circulating. So we looked at the Treasury dollar bill portions of this legislation at the last hearing, how the digital cash will work. And today we're going to look at Subtitle B, the American Union Jobs Program, and how it gets distributed. So Section 441 is the findings and purpose. Just to give a brief overview, the American Union Jobs Program is a universal basic income. Everyone gets an American Union job. Everyone gets an unconditional $300 a week, and it's paid in Treasury dollar bills. This is the distribution program for the Treasury dollar bills to ensure we have a trickle-up economy where all citizens benefit. I'd like to read the findings into the record. They're a little bit on the lengthy side, but they cover the reasons of why universal basic income, why we can do this, why we should do this, what are the benefits of doing this. And yeah, I'm just going to read these into the record. A, Congress finds the following. 1, America has sufficient resources to ensure that none of its citizens live in poverty. The easiest, simplest way to do this is with universal unconditional income, basic income, UBI, a regular amount of cash distributed to all citizens. In his book, The Road to Serfdom, Hayek advocated for assuring that some minimum of food, shelter, and clothing were provided to everyone. However, individuals are best suited to decide what their specific needs are. Providing fungible cash gives people the liberty to make their own choices. 2, it is the unconditionality and universality that brings many of the intangible benefits of UBI. Finland's recent experiment found recipients experienced increased trust, which is something America could benefit from when they felt supported by those around them. Many societal benefits addressing wealth inequality have been well documented in the book, The Spirit Level, Why Greater Equality Makes Society Stronger. 3, as a form of UBI, the American Union Jobs Program will establish a safety floor that no one can fall beneath at $15,600 annually for adults, plus $5,200 a year for children. Allowing tens of millions of our countrymen to fall into poverty through the holes in our existing safety net demonstrates that we are failing in our constitutional duty to promote the general welfare, health, happiness, and prosperity. When combined with Treasury dollar bills and a public payment infrastructure, it will also bring millions into the banking system and reduce demand for predatory lending. 4, the health of the nation will benefit by ending poverty with UBI. In her book, Hand to Mouth, Living in Bootstrap America, Linda Tirado observed, quote, being healthy and being poor are generally mutually exclusive conditions. We all have physical weaknesses, but a rich person tends to get these tended to before they get out of control. Poor people don't have that luxury. 5, consequently, poverty is a tremendous driver of healthcare usage, although it hasn't always been that way. 50 years ago, average costs for poor patients were less than those of wealthy patients. In 1992, they reached parity, and by 2008, Medicare spending was 30 to 40% higher for lower income beneficiaries. 6, Dr. Richard Buzz Cooper examined usage rates within the Wisconsin hospital referral regions, where Milwaukee has a 35% higher usage rate than the rest of the state, measured in days used per 1,000 people. However, that usage was not uniform within the city. When usage rates were broken out by zip codes, he discovered that the poorest ones had an 85% above average utilization rate, and concluded that lifting up the poor and near poor residents could decrease hospital utilization by as much as 35%. He wrote, quote, most of this increment was due to very high rates of admission and readmission for chronic illnesses, such as congestive heart failure, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and diabetes, which were 4-fold to 7-fold more frequent among residents of the poverty corridor than those residing in Milwaukee's affluent suburbs. 7, children will gain some of the largest health benefits from UBI. When pregnant mothers are stressed, studies show they can pass along epigenetic hardships to their unborn children, leading to an increased risk of many of the health issues that Dr. Cooper identified in Milwaukee. 8, childhood development is also impacted by economic stress in a household. Adults concerned about issues like rent are less talkative, and the amount of verbal engagement children receive is a key indicator of future success. A 2018 study estimating the economic cost of childhood poverty in the United States found that poverty also increases child maltreatment, which then drives foster care services and other child welfare programs. Their research suggested poverty was the direct cause of 30% of the children in the child welfare system. 9. The lifetime costs of childhood poverty are tremendous. That same study estimated them at $1,030 billion for the cohort of children born in a given year. More than one-third was attributed to crime and incarceration, with another 29% coming from reduced lifetime earnings. And the authors concluded, children being raised in poverty do not have the same chances for success as children who are raised in middle or upper income families. This contradicts our very belief in liberty and justice for all. 10. During the 1990s, research in the Great Smoky Mountains of North Carolina were studying the long-term psychological impacts of poverty on children there. And a few years into the study, profit sharing from a new casino boosted the family incomes of about a quarter of the participants. The resulting control group provided an insight into the familial effects of reducing poverty. Parents reported a third less arguments, less drug and alcohol usage, and the children's behavioral symptoms dropped 27%. When they grew up, they were 22% more likely to find a full-time job. 11. Many of the health benefits are directly attributable to empowering parents to make better decisions for their children. Parents all across the economic spectrum tend to spend extra money on their kids when they can. Fruits, vegetables, other healthier foods in the house are one common result of basic income experiments. In Alaska, babies who got a $1,000 oil dividend in their first year of life were 4.5% less likely to be obese compared to those whose benefit didn't arrive until they were toddlers. 12. American union jobs recognize the value in the work that everyone does, even if it's not employment. UBI will allow many families to consider having a parent stay home during a child's formative years, further strengthening families. Proposals to address poverty with a higher minimum wage miss important booms like this one because they only benefit those who work for financial compensation. UBI is an unconditional $300 a week raise for every adult, plus $100 for every child. It offers greater freedom to decide for oneself how to allocate time between work and leisure. 13. The cliche of the starving artist is well known. With UBI to provide a minimum level of income, it's easy to imagine art colonies springing up, with people pooling their incomes and sharing a house while they pursue their art. Others will form cooperatives around different businesses or industries. One can picture artisans working together to run small factories or farms, video game studios, other boutique offerings of all sorts. With America enmeshed in the World Wide Web, the demand for global entrepreneurial services can be provided from anywhere. 14. For those engaged in traditional employment, American union jobs will provide greater liberty in choosing an employer, freeing people to seek right livelihood. They will also enable greater civic engagement. Occupy Wall Street needed about $1,000 a day for food in Zuccotti Park, and while people made sacrifices to be there, it was unsustainable. American union jobs bring the power to petition our government for redress of grievances. On $300 a week, campaigns could literally occupy Washington. 15. UBI unlocks large amounts of human potential that is currently trapped by poverty. The impact of economic stress has been tested in many ways, such as evaluating farmers in India before and after the harvest. The distraction of insecurity has been found to lower IQ by 13 points and to increase the number of errors factory workers make. 16. Unsurprisingly, poverty is also a driver of crime. Basic economic principles suggest people commit crimes if the benefits outweigh the cost, so poor people have a greater rate of return. Alaska discovered that property crimes fell about 8% in the 2 weeks after their annual oil dividend was distributed. 17. This influence works in both directions. The criminal justice system disproportionately includes people in the lower quintiles of income. A Villanova University study concluded mass incarceration has increased the U.S. poverty rate by an estimated 20%. A family's probability of being poor is 40% greater if the father is imprisoned. 18. Many Americans would use their UBI to pay down student loans or other debt. As productivity has increased since the 1970s, wages have not kept up with these gains, resulting in an economic gap between the amount of wages earned in the economy and the value of goods produced for sale. That structural deficit, which has been temporarily filled in with increasing consumer debt, can only be permanently bridged by an external source of income, or alternately negated by widespread defaults. American union jobs are essential to the continued prosperity of our nation. 19. Although they are unconditional, no one can be fired from an American union job any more than they can be fired from being an American. They do include job duties, because they are a regular reminder of the 5 duties enumerated in the preamble: establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. 20. Even the rare individual who does nothing productive in a given week is promoting the general welfare, prosperity, by spending $300, bridging that structural gap between wage income and productive output. This will rejuvenate local economies all around the nation as small businesses reap the rewards of new paying customers. An economy powered by UBI is a trickle-up economy. Money is spent multiple times as it works its way up the economic ladder. 21. As Americans, we can cooperate to ensure that all of us have enough to meet our basic needs. That gives us greater freedom from economic coercion, providing the ability to walk away from abusive or exploitative relationships. The liberty to make meaningful choices about our lives is a critical component of happiness. Subsection B, purpose. The purpose of the American Union Jobs Program is to 1. Promote health, happiness, and prosperity. 2. Remind every citizen of the United States of our duties to each other. And 3. To end poverty. Mixed Chair, I think that covers an awful lot, and I'll let that conclude my testimony for section 441, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit, ask a few questions. Why should this program be universal or unconditional? If the goal is to end poverty, wouldn't it make more sense to only give money to poor people?
Thank you for the question. I said that the findings covered an awful lot, but yeah, I guess they didn't really cover that. There's so many benefits to universal basic income. So why not make it targeted? Why not only give money to poor people? Scott Santens, who's a longtime advocate and researcher on universal basic income, he's written many articles on this topic, and you should, if you want to know more, you should look up his work. But some of the articles he's written, some of the points that he's made is that our existing welfare structure allows many people to fall through. It's a safety net, and which by definition is full of holes. And in some states, it's 5-10% of the people who are eligible for these programs don't end up receiving them, which is why we have nearly 40 million people in this country living in poverty. Another one of his articles uses the example of life jackets, that if you're in a room with 100 people that's rapidly filling with water, who do you give life jackets to, assuming there's enough for everybody? And the answer is just give them to everybody. Don't start asking people who knows how to swim or who needs one. You don't need to make any complicated bureaucracy. Just give a life jacket to everyone. And in America, we have the resources to make sure that to lift every American out of poverty. And so let's not waste time on trying to divide people into worthy and unworthy. Let's lift everyone up with a universal program. And the last article is very persuasive, calls universal basic income liquid infrastructure, because money is fungible. Well, you can do whatever fits best for you. If this week, this month you need help with your rent, you can use it for that. If next month your car breaks down, you can use it for that. If you need food, you can use it for that. If you have a garden, then you don't need to do that. If you want to pay down your student loans, it's liquid infrastructure. It will fill the needs as you see fit. I guess one other reason that I'd like to talk about is the stigma of making programs not including everyone. We saw this. There's a great article by John Muniz of the People's Basics, and he listed 15 reasons why means testing was a terrible idea. And so just very briefly, he points out that means testing creates higher administrative costs. It causes more administrative errors. It makes programs more politically divisive. And this is something that really needs to be addressed in America today. The point of a universal basic income is to get all Americans on the same page, not dividing us into the 99% and the 1% or whatever else. All Americans, and we should all benefit from this program. His other points include that means testing creates a work disincentive. And if you're going to lose your benefits if you start earning income, then maybe you don't look for work. It creates benefit delays and disruptions. It creates an information risk for benefit delivery. It's not more progressive because the net benefit of the poor is higher than the net benefit for the rich, because the rich will be spending more on taxes funding the aid. We'll talk more about this when we get into the value-added tax next week. Means testing creates poorer quality programs. It creates stigma in receiving benefits. This is another very important reason why this should be a universal program, so that there is no stigma attached to it. Nobody feels like they're taking advantage of the government by using the public roads or the sidewalks or the libraries or things like that, because those are universal programs. But there are some people, some families that getting welfare, getting government help is something that they choose not to do, even if it means that kids grow up in poverty as a result of that choice. So let's just end poverty. One of the last things is that means testing makes benefit programs handle income fluctuation worse. We saw this in 2020 when lots of people lost their jobs. And so if you do means testing on how much somebody made last year, well, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with how much they're currently earning. And so a universal program is better. And last, means testing incentivizes people to commit fraud in order to receive more benefits. One universal program at a flat rate, there's no incentive to say you made less than you did or to hide your income or anything like that, because everybody gets an American Union job on unconditional $300 a week. So next year, I think those are some of the reasons why we don't just give money to poor people and keep it as a universal program for all Americans.
Right. Do you know how many conditional welfare programs we have at the federal level right now?
The last number I think I heard was 126. That's the number that jumps to mind.
Sounds like they're not working.
Well, there's a lot of overlap. There's where.
Well, that's
go ahead.
That's my point. Is they're not the Achilles heel of all of them is that they are conditional. Otherwise, we wouldn't keep making new ones.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So that's just a point I like to make.